Can you say a little bit more about what happens when we actually understand that we are in the capacity business, if you will, and how we can actually build that in terms of what it is we're trying to accomplish?
So one fun thing about authenticity is that the more you can work in it, the more it feels a little bit more like flow, because you're just working without all of the extra pieces where you're thinking, oh, I have to frame this way. Oh, I need to change how I'm appearing here. Let's make sure that I'm presenting this exact face, because I think that's what people need to see. When you can let go of those things, you can enter a little bit more flow state and you can have a lot more energy. Humans aren't just machines. We can't just plug them in. You can't have somebody who had a job title, then they leave the organization and you hire somebody else in that exact title and expect just this plugs in and we'll just all keep rolling the same way we were before. As well as just personal experiences that are rolling through their lives that will change their capacity to be present in a day and to execute at the level that they want to be able to execute at.
You're now not trying to see your employees or your team as everybody should be performing the same way, showing up the same way, but it's that uniqueness. Is like, I now understand that Nicole is really good at showing up this way. This really gives her energy, while Abby is a completely different human. But if I meet her where she's at and she's able to show up for her as her authentic self, I now have two superpowers.
My first very special guest is a leadership culture and team transformation expert. Her work focuses on helping leaders and teams communicate more effectively, navigate change with less friction, and build cultures grounded in trust, clarity, and connection. She is Cristina Amigoni. How are you, Cristina?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I love that intro, by the way.
A great one. I loved reading it. And I'm excited about this next one, too, because my second very special guest has enjoyed a winding career path through writing, consulting, coaching, coding, and even comedy. He has focused on finding the truth and humor in life to help everyone live a little better. He is Alex Cullimore. Alex, great to see you today.
Great to see you, Matt. Thanks for having us on. We need you on every one of our podcasts. Can you intro us everywhere we go?
It's something that I certainly enjoy doing, and I'll tell listeners that together, these two are the co-authors of the Authenticity Upgrade, Rebooting Leadership for Real Humans, co-hosts of the podcast Uncover the Human, and co-founders of Siamo, which is a human-centric leadership and culture consultancy. I'm so excited to be having this conversation. We were introduced by Lynn Weinman, and I just really excited about the conversations we've had and following your great content on LinkedIn. So what do you say?
Let's get started.
Yeah, we're very excited to be here.
Well, I know that each of you had a great deal of working experience in organizations before you decided to found Siamo. And I guess my question for you is, that's one thing to found a company, but it's another to tackle a book project, as I know all too well. So my question is, what kind of patterns, what were you seeing out there that said, you know what, we need to write this down in a book and tackle that big project?
I think it's mostly the same patterns we saw that made us want to start a company. We were like, there's really great people out there trying to do really great work and finding themselves blocked often by leadership that just isn't quite connecting with what they need or what they can do, or just overriding it. And so we wanted to give that human touch to the workplace. And that's what made us want to start a company. And as we got to experience doing that work with companies, we were like, okay, we need to be able to spread this beyond just the people that we are currently engaged with at every contract, every client. We started to see patterns showing up of people just needing to understand how to listen better, understand how to coach, understand how to connect and use emotions in the workplace, not try to avoid them, not to suppress them. And we realized that there's so much humanity that is really unavoidable, and yet we spend so much time suppressing it. And so if we could help people learn how to address that, there's some leverage there, and people can actually relax, be humans in the workplace, and get a lot more done and have a lot more fun doing it.
It's incredible when you think about how much energy goes into that suppression that you talked about, and how much we fight just our natural need, the human nature, if you will. And I'm really right there with you when it comes to seeing this pattern repeat over and over again, and just saying we've got to be able to do better when it comes to that humanity of how we approach our work.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, and you've seen in the book, I say, like, one of my sentences to go was like, there's got to be a better way than this for pretty much anything. And that better way is, these are brilliant people. Everybody, for the most part, wants to show up and do great work and be productive. Why are we going against what they can do to put them in boxes or to devalue them and not understand what they can bring?
I think so much of what we study, I suppose I would say, management science, and we do all these things around operations, and we try to remove any of the likelihood of error, and it ends up taking this kind of reductionist or a mechanistic approach to work. And we wish we could just always have predictable outcomes and always grow our revenues and contain our costs and all these things. But it kind of leads us past the fact that we do have humans who are doing the most valuable parts of the work. And I think that's where some of the trouble probably sets in.
It reminds me of the entire journey of like the study of economics, where for so long it was just this study of like systems and everybody must be a rational, self-interested actor. And it took them forever to finally realize like, hey, wait, we don't have a system of rational actors. And so they created behavioral economics where they're like, by the way, what if we counted humans, being humans?
It's totally true. As an irrational actor myself, I really appreciate that viewpoint because I don't like to be put into a little box. And it was one of the most depressing things about when I studied psychology was how much, we could really predict about people's behavior. But I think never to the point where we're able to run these perfectly frictionless, businesses and organizations. We've got to lead it. And I think this is where it really, to me, highlights and underscores the importance of authenticity, which is what the core of your book is all about. And I know in one of our earlier conversations, I had mentioned that a lot of times my listeners are these either middle managers on a mission, they're people who are rising in the organization, been promoted a few times, the HR counterparts who support them, people who want to do really great work. But I think that a lot of times there have been pressure on people, they felt it, to sort of conform or to sell out or to modify some way to try to fit into the mold. What is it that you see as happening now? Here it is, as we're doing this recording, what's changed and has that pressure sort of lessened? Has it increased? Has it just shifted? Like, what do you think in terms of the pressure that people might feel to be something other than authentic?
I think, unfortunately, it has increased, especially with the last couple of years and last year when we look at the job market and making it, with all the layoffs and being more of an employer market than an employee market. The pressure to just follow orders, even if they're not going to work out, and everybody is going to suffer, has increased. I'm one that I've never conformed in that way, and pretty much every boss I've ever had can attest to that. It's like, if, whenever I saw something that was wrong, I was like, no, that's not going to work. We're going to do it differently. But I do in part of that self way of showing up was knowing and also saying it out loud. I'm going to do this and I'm going to get fired when I do it. Alex can say that most of the times, especially in our last job, I got promoted every single time I did that and said that. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot of knowing, like, this may be my last day today, but this is not good for the company and it's not good for the people. And I don't have full decision making power because I'm not a senior executive. I'm not at the top, but I'm gonna do what I can.
Yeah, it's so true. Go ahead, Alex. You were gonna say.
Oh, I was just going to agree with that. I think that it has increased because of exactly that. It takes so much to speak up and say anything, and it really speaks to the culture that I think we've created. And I think that we have gone through so many rapid changes that people are now tired of hearing people say they're tired of change. And so we've got even more pressure to say, like, just do what I ask. And this takes even more autonomy away, even more effort to go have those conversations that are very necessary. And most companies do appreciate when they happen, but the threshold to have those seems to be rising all the time.
Yeah, it feels like there was a time when maybe it was a more employee-centric a couple of years ago, certainly after the Great Resignation, took hold and people had a lot more mobility than they feel that they have today. There seemed to be more of an encouragement, I think, to be authentic. The challenge that I think that most leaders don't really pick up on is if you've created an environment where you expect compliance and you expect and try to put that pressure on people to either withhold or to shape themselves in a way that's not natural, you're costing so much energy, so much that could be going into innovation and productivity and investing in commitment in terms of what goes into the organization. That it comes at a cost. You can't get something for nothing. And I feel like that's one of the challenges, not even just beyond the human toll of what it feels like when you can't be yourself, but I think just the reality of how it shows up in our work. It's inevitable.
Oh, yeah, it's a huge cost that will be felt by the organization. So if the reasoning is the bottom line, then think about the bottom line, because the bottom line is going to get hit badly.
It really is true. And I feel like a lot of times this notion that this mechanistic view, and I think that the introduction of AI and things like this have only in some ways increased that. We really focus on productivity at all costs now. And and these sorts of things. But the subtitle of your book is all about rebooting leadership for real humans. Real humans. I love that. And so I guess my question is, when you think about human nature, what does that actually mean when it comes to working with human nature and embracing the fact that we have real humans who do work for us instead of kind of railing against it and doing some of these artificial acts that we see too often today?
I think the way you put it with it being mechanistic is exactly the opposite of what working with human nature is like, because humans aren't just machines. We can't just plug them in. You can't have somebody who had a job title, then they leave the organization and you hire somebody else in that exact title and expect just this plugs in and we'll just all keep rolling the same way we were before. Everybody has a little different take on things. Everybody has a different way of looking at things. They have their own experiences that are informing why they're showing up, how they're showing up, how they're going to do that, as well as just personal experiences that are rolling through their lives that will change their capacity to be present in a day and to execute at the level that they want to be able to execute at. And so all of these things are just parts of human nature. And instead of just forcing everybody to either try and comply with what the orders are or always show up at 100%, which inevitably involves masking. And to your point, Matt, there's so much effort that goes into suppression and masking that you're just going to lose people on the long term. It's really painful to see happen. And like you said, that the human experience is painful, but you watch it just drain companies when you don't allow people to just have regular emotions. They might feel bad about a change, and that's okay. It doesn't mean that the change is going to fail, but you should listen to it instead of just trying to suppress it all, say like, just get on board or whatever other thing that just suppresses the actual human who has to go through the experience of doing this and can contribute so much if you let them be the human they are.
Yeah, and I think that it's not as if people can't get there. But Christina, you were going to say?
Oh, no, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like it's not that people can't get there. A lot of times when we think about change, and whether it could be something like we need to adopt this AI that some people are frankly either quite scared of, or and with understandable reason, because we're not giving them a lot of information as we drive up our expectations. But even something else like return to office, I don't think we always stop and put down a blanket policy like return to office and think about how it's going to be absorbed individually. If someone has, someone elderly in their home that they need to care for, they prefer to put their kids on the bus, and now they can't do that. It doesn't land on everyone equally. And then to say like, hey, just suck it up, just come to work. This is just how it's going to be. It's kind of flying in the face of that human nature, I think, and it's costing us something along the way, it seems.
Oh, it definitely is. I mean, we've seen buildings empty after return to office has been a policy for like 3 or 4 years. But every time we walk in, there's nobody here. So humans will do what humans want to do. And so going against the human nature means like you're going to still see what humans want to do because they're still going to find a way around it.
I was just going to say the anecdote of the defiance that can come with human nature when you try and put them into that. There's a story of Dish, which instituted like very strict office hours, like be here by 9 and don't leave until 5. And there've been people who were working 12-hour days before were happy to like just kind of put in that extra mile, but then suddenly it was restricted and asked for, and suddenly everybody's showing up for exactly that time. Like, fine, that's your policy, I'll follow the policy. And they are saying like, what's that's the phrase, like, if you want to punish your boss, do exactly what they say. And it really does come to human nature. Like you've just restricted their options. They could have done more for you if you didn't try and impose that.
Yeah, there's a counterbalance there, right? So water finds its level, and people are like, well, when I had autonomy, I was happy to, sort of give the benefit of the doubt, so to speak, or use that discretionary effort. But now, if you're going to be that, well, then we have to respond in kind, right? And it's not exactly what we want. And I love this notion of human nature because so much of what we're trying to do right now is to add these technologies that I don't want to say they're commodities, but it's pretty close, because if AI can do it tomorrow, then pretty much all the AIs, which means all your competitors, can do it too. I think human nature is what's left when it comes to competitive differentiation, capability, innovation, being agile and dynamic, all these kinds of things. So it seems like there should be a premium, I should say, on human nature. So why isn't there? Why is there still such a tendency to sort of look at humans as squishy and uncontrollable, and like what accounts for that?
I think there's such a focus on numbers and metrics and data, and it's easier to measure easier. On paper, it's easier to measure, okay, 25% or 30% or 50% of employees are using AI. Great, that's a success. And I'm like, well, is it? Are they using AI to create images, or are they using AI to do better work or faster work or more efficient work? And I think that the squishiness, the connections between humans, it's still very hard to measure. And because of the very heavy data metrics driven way of making business decisions, it's like, well, I can't measure it, so that can't be important. Let's make the other things important.
It makes me wonder about some of the more sort of human-centric businesses. I think about like Pixar and other types of creative industries. They must have ways of measuring sort of things that otherwise seem squishy. I just wonder why they haven't caught on more inside of organizations that are, maybe a little bit further removed from that, but who really do still need to make sure that the human systems are operating just as well as the traditional production systems.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head by saying it's squishy and uncontrollable, because that's what I think people try and glue down. And I think Pixar has, you have to really just count on the outcomes. Did you get the movie out at the deadline you said you would? Is it something that is a good movie? Did you get enough focus groups or whatever that it helped carve the right story? And this is going to be an inherently messy process. And I think that's what makes it somewhat difficult. And I think retreat to our comfort zones. We say, this is not controllable. I want this outcome. Like, let's focus on the things we can control. And we try and treat humans as part of that equation instead of allowing them to kind of move a little bit more freely sometimes. And it's really scary to let that go, because we feel like we can't control the outcome. And to some extent, we can't. We don't necessarily know that it's going to work. And that's really hard as a human to deal with. We don't necessarily do uncertainty very well.
It's so paradoxical too, because we should be scared to death of conformity and sameness and, groupthink and these things. And we should be celebrating people who have the type of authenticity that you write about and that you help us to understand and develop and put into practice. And kind of on that note, when you refer to authenticity, you hear that term a lot. It's been around for a little bit, but you actually refer to it as a practical leadership operating system. And that is a lens on it that I hadn't seen before. So what is the difference between how we traditionally define authenticity and in sort of its nicey nice kind of way versus the very pragmatic way that you've described it as a leadership operating system?
What we've seen over and over is the practical part is that if you focus on being authentic, so understanding like, what are my values, how am I showing up, what's the awareness of me, what do I care about, and create the space for others to do the same, and also embrace uniqueness. Like, I'm really good at this, or this gives me a lot of energy, and I'm not so good at that, and it's okay. I don't have to be great at everything, especially as a leader. I don't have to have all the answers. I don't have to be great at everything. That creates the space for other people to also show up with their gifts, with their uniqueness, with their talents. And so the practical part is that now your productivity, all those things that you try to measure, your efficacy, your productivity, your efficiency, your innovation, all of that starts skyrocketing. And that human nature piece that we also talked about, like, you're now not trying to see your employees or your team as everybody should be performing the same way, showing up the same way, saying the same things, but it's that uniqueness. It's like, I now understand that Nicole is really good at showing up this way. This really gives her energy. While Abby is a completely different human, but if I meet her where she's at and she's able to show up for her as her authentic self, I now have two superpowers.
Yeah, you're not losing all that energy. Go ahead, Alex.
No, it's exactly that. I was going to highlight the energy portion, the practical portion of authenticity, and we define it in the book as talking about being less friction. Like, you're living with less friction when you're in more authenticity, because you're not using the energy to mask, to act like somebody else, to be somebody else. So you have so much more energy available to give to things, and you can put that into the things that really matter. And that's really important for a leader, both for the ripple effect that Cristina was talking about, where other people also feel that permission. You're just accessing more of people's available capacity to deliver, and then they want to deliver, and you get much more practical application by allowing yourself to deal with your own vulnerability, know that these are things you can do, cannot do, like, don't like, instead of trying to be perfect or trying to appear perfect, even though everybody can see through the facade.
I want to keep you on that for a second, Alex. When you use the term capacity, which I find fascinating, I've always loved it, but I don't think I've done a good job when I use it, because I'm probably misusing it in some ways. When you describe capacity, like, can you say a little bit more about what happens when we actually understand that we are in the capacity business, if you will, and how we can actually build that in terms of what it is we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah. So one fun thing about authenticity is that it the more you can work in it, the more it feels a little bit more like flow, because you're just working without all of the extra pieces where you're thinking, oh, I have to frame this way. Oh, I need to change how I'm appearing here. Let's make sure that I'm presenting this exact face, because I think that's what people need to see. When you can let go of those things, you can enter a little bit more flow state, and you can have a lot more energy. And flow states, and the last studies that I saw, are something like 5 times more productive. So you can get some of those boosts out when you allow yourself to lean into your capacity. And your capacity is very dependent on the things that you find valuable and that you value. When you can honor your values, but you can work within your values and make sure you're not challenging them or doing things that challenge yourself or the world, or your view of what you'd like to see of the world, it allows you to actually operate in spaces where you get more energy and you can have that high capacity, instead of this. The way we sometimes see people talk about capacity is in kind of the Nike just do it sense. Like, well, you've got 3 extra hours here. Make sure you just force yourself to get through those 3 hours. That's what hustle is. That's what the people who are going to be successful are doing. And it's not to say that there aren't times you use some of that willpower, but if you're only using willpower, you're not treating yourself and making sure you have enough capacity and making sure you understand when that's lowering and what you can do to get it back. If you don't do that, you end up burning yourself out because you believe you just have to keep pushing, and you might end up in a just long enough streak of things that drain you that you're going to feel that burnout, at which point nobody can deliver. If there's low capacity, it's very hard to get out of that. You're spinning your wheels in the mud. It's very hard to dig yourself out of that one. Whereas if you treat capacity like something that you understand personally and can build, it can be more of a virtuous cycle of, I will build my own capacity. I will make sure I'm monitoring it and know that, yes, I'll use some of it here, but I'll get it back when I look at this or do it this way or take this time to go do something that definitely will refill me.
And for the leader listeners, it's incredibly layered, if you will. So the first is, my own capacity. I have to understand my values and make sure I'm living authentically, that I'm willing to have the type of courage, Cristina, that you shared earlier that helped you get promoted and not in fact fired. So it's like on the personal level, you've got that. But then also with Nicole, if I give Nicole the wrong work assignments, that's going to reduce her capacity. Give her an assignment that's not naturally suited for her, that's a problem. But you also shared earlier the RTO example where a policy outside of my control may have come down on my team, and they used to put in their discretionary effort. And now they're like, I noticed that you're stopping right at 5:00 these days. Like, where did all that capacity go? It's layered, isn't it?
It's very layered. Well, and also the capacity that we have comes from the outside world as well. Like, we're not just, I think there's an Apple TV show where, you basically unplug your humanness or your being, your outside work being. And then when you're at work, you're a different person. That doesn't actually happen. And so capacity is tied to, getting energy from the work we're doing and everything around it. But it's also tied to what's happening to us on a personal life. Like one of the things that I'm sure we've all experienced is we come back from the holidays and our capacity the first week probably not gonna be the same capacity that we have on a regular week. Like, we're all trying to restart the engine and understand what's going on and come back from rest. And so as a leader, it's important to have empathy for that, for yourself and your team, and name it out loud. Hey, this is going to be a tough week. We're all re-entering after being off for a couple of weeks and after running around for holiday stuff. What's everybody's capacity? And know that if I'm at 40% capacity, well, then I'm going to give 100% of 40%. But I'm not going to be able to give 100% of 100% because that's not my capacity today.
I saw that in spades when it came to this shift to remote work, where people who had been high performers in the office, at first at least, struggled and didn't understand what was happening to them, saying, I used to be so persuasive and effective and gregarious, and the collaboration just flowed so naturally. And now I find myself at a disadvantage. And there was a big adjustment period there. And they surprised themselves and almost took it very hard on themselves to say, what is wrong with me? And the answer is, these things are fluid. We're not fixed in terms of the capacity we're always going to be able to give. Life changes, circumstances changes, we change. I think it gives a lot of permission to say, always, how do we keep it in focus, but then also give ourselves the grace that if we come back from the holidays and we just are having a hard time getting back in the swing of things, it's very natural. I think a lot of this stuff is more natural than we make it seem.
Indeed. Yes. It's like having a car. If it snows outside, the car's capacity for speed is going to be very different than if it's sunny and dry outside. So what's the outside influence for the capacity of the human?
Yeah, and I think that a lot of times one thing that I've seen drain capacity is, well, it's me. as the leader, doing things, skipping steps. And I know in one of our calls that we had earlier, we talked about one of the beautiful frameworks you have in your book that talks about how we need to set strategy. Yes. Eventually we have to execute that strategy. Sure. But when we skip over that critical middle phase, what you refer to as the activation phase, it can cause some challenges, which I know I've been guilty of. Can you tell me a little bit more about this kind of 3-step process, and then really highlight, when we're going from strategy to activation to execution, what is it about that middle phase, that activation phase, that's so important?
This is a great capacity question too, actually. So we borrowed that language from the Table Group, who talks about this in their Working Genius model. They talk about implementation, activation. Ideation, implementation, activation, in a different order. The activation's in the middle. Yes. But that's where we go wrong. We tend to go for ideation first. We tend to go into like, hey, there's a big idea. We know we need to do something better. We come up with a strategy. We're all at the leadership level. There's a whole bunch of closed door meetings, and they've all decided this is the strategy that will help us all march forward. And by the time you've gone through enough of those planning sessions, you have a very good mental model for what you think this is going to be. Hopefully all the leaders have the same mental model of what this is going to be. And you jump out and we're excited about it. This is an idea. Let's do it. Let's just immediately start it. But you're going and throwing that on people who have not had the same time to adjust to an idea, might not think it's a good idea, might have had some input that you might have missed when you were trying to come up with this strategy. Maybe you missed some process that's incredibly crucial that is going to have to change dramatically. Nobody's happy about that, or they feel like it's taking away some of their teammates or departments or whatever else. There's any kind of loss might happen. When you miss that activation, and that's the phase where you really go out and make sure this is a workable idea and make sure everybody's lined up with it. It's kind of the change management phase of really make sure everybody's on board, understands their journey, their personal journey from I'm doing this today, what am I doing tomorrow? That's what, and how am I going to get there? And how am I going to be supported in that? Do I have to, if it's maybe an AI implementation, you can get excited about an AI tool. When you throw it on your company, do they all know how to use it? Do they know what's going to benefit them? Do they know how it's going to make their lives better? That's all activation questions that help people get on board with it and actually move into the implementation of, okay, let's do this. Let's adopt this. Here's what I'm going to do about it. I understand the big picture. So when I'm faced with my own personal decisions, I can align with that as long as people are excited about it. And so when you skip that activation phase and just say, hey, we're doing this now, you've really kind of gummed up the works on people suddenly not being able to adjust to a change and feeling like it's thrown on them. And they don't have the chance to put in input and make sure that this is the right thing and make sure they are on board and ready. Because that readiness portion is really important, because we don't necessarily think of people as having readiness. We just think, well, this is the change. Please get on board with it. But people need to be ready to do so. That might mean knowledge. That might mean enthusiasm. That might mean emotional connection. Whatever those readiness pieces are, they're not going to move until they have enough of that.
Do you get the sense that leaders just don't recognize the importance of activation, or are they impatient and just want to get to the execution, or are they afraid? Do they feel we're going to fall behind if we don't execute right away? What is it that causes in this prolonged problem?
Part of the things is that they don't realize that they've gone through their own activation by being in closed door rooms for 6 months, a year, building the strategy, thinking about it, looking at the picture. It hasn't really, they've spent all that time digesting. They've spent that time, hopefully, with some people in the room not agreeing or asking questions. And somehow they think because we've done it and we have the perfect plan and where we want to go, it should be clear for everybody else. But we as humans, we all need activation in anything. I mean, think about something as simple as, driving to the store and there's road work. The activation phase is seeing the signs for a month before saying, hey, there's going to be a detour. Hey, there's going to be a detour. Hey, this is the best detour. Hey, use your Google Maps. That's the activation. It's not like, all of a sudden the road is closed. The reaction is going to be like, what? Now I'm late. Now this is causing me problems. And all these things come up.
Oh, I was just going to say that it's like that Harry Met Sally line that, when you want to spend the rest of your life with somebody, you want that to start as soon as possible. I think that's where we skip it. We get so excited about the idea, or we're already sold on it, and we totally forget that other people aren't sold. We keep saying they, but honestly, we all fall prey to this. We've done it multiple times, even in our own company. It's just, you get excited about an idea. You're like, man, this will really improve things. We're going to do something different. You want it to happen as soon as possible. And it just can't.
It just can't. And I think there's another hard truth in this, which is that I've seen executive teams a lot of times that are afraid to commit to a strategy. They're endlessly debating and, okay, fine, let's go around, because we're afraid that we're going to choose wrong or whatever it might be. And then all you're doing is prolonging the beginning of the activation phase for your teams. So if you can't get to resolution quickly, you're going to really elongate sort of that execution phase. And I think the more we deliberate it, get comfortable with it, we don't realize we're costing ourselves precious time. That's not to say we should move too quickly or too soon, but is there really value in this ongoing debate? Can't we just do the classic disagree and commit and then, move forward so we can start the activation? Otherwise, we're really going to set ourselves back. Doubly so. We took too much time in strategy and then we went too fast and we had to back up. And this is like failed execution, like 101.
Yes. Well, and also the strategy piece, it's like you don't know if it's going to work until you're actually doing it. So have an idea, do your job at understanding the communication, understand how this impacts every individual and what you're expecting them to do. Be clear about what you're expecting them to do. And then know that this may or not work. Maybe it didn't work the way it was in your head. Maybe it may work 90% of it or 10% of it. But until you're actually doing it, you don't know what was missed.
I think activation is also just inevitable. Like you can skip it, but then you'll end up back at it anyway. You can try and jump right into it, and then everybody will still have to go through it. But now they'll be a little bit more angry about it, or you might just step on toes to do it. So you can make the activation phase painful. You can make it less painful. It's going to take some time, regardless. I want to move fast. I understand wanting to move fast, and you're going to cost that time one way or another. Maybe do it in the more energy effective way.
It's another classic illustration of that phrase when it comes to people: fast is slow and slow is fast. The more we try to go fast with our people, in the long run, it slows us down because we have to back up. We've made missteps. It would have been easier if we took our time, we moved at the right rate of speed. Then all of a sudden, in the long run, it might have felt slower, but in fact, it actually was faster.
Yes, indeed.
Well, it's funny that we talk about authenticity. There was a time when very early days of the show, somebody pulled me aside and they said, "Hey, how's it going with your new podcast?" I said, "You know what? I have a problem. I don't love my own show. I don't love my show." They're like, "Why?" I said, "Something's missing. I like to have a little bit of levity. I like to have some fun, and it's not in there." They said, "Well, then put it in." So what I've done almost at the beginning was to have a fun trivia segment. Now, I always try to choose some trivia question that's kind of based on something from my guests. And I saw a quote where you talked about Siamo, which is Italian for we are. And your website is wearesiamo.com, which you said was a little bit redundant because it's in there twice. But it got me thinking about Italian phrases. So we're going to get a trivia question about Italian phrases, which is good.
All right. Good luck, Alex.
Yeah, I was going to say, this one's going to be for Cristina.
I know, we got a ringer. It's so great. That never happens. But her multiple choice for us is, I think I have a feeling we're going to get it. Spoiler alert. What does the common Italian phrase ciao mean? Is it A, thank you, B, hello or goodbye, or C, please? Take your guess. Alex, we're going to get you first. What do you think?
Hello, goodbye.
Hello, goodbye. So audience, right along at home, do you think ciao means A, thank you, B, hello, goodbye, or C, please? We went with B, of course, and that is correct. The answer is B. Fabulous. See? Authentic. You helped me be my most authentic self by having a fun trivia segment, and you crushed it. I love that. Here's something that we may not have known, though. It turns out that the word comes from the Venetian phrase, I can't even say it, vostro, si ciao vostro, meaning I am your slave, in sense of I am at your service. Over time, it was shortened to just ciao.
I did not know that.
How about that?
Was it used both as a greeting and a departure then, too?
I guess so. Who knows? But
I'm your slave. I'm your slave.
I've got a much, much better question for you, which is, where can my audience go to learn about you, about Siamo, and about the book?
So our website, wearesiamo.com, as you mentioned. We're on LinkedIn, and so you can find both of us on LinkedIn and our company, Siamo, on LinkedIn. And our book, The Authenticity Upgrade, is available on Amazon in all formats, except for Audible, which we're working on.
In process.
In process.
And finally, our podcast, Uncover the Human.
Oh, yes.
And Uncover the Human. There you go. Full service. You got us covered at every base. And listeners, I'm gonna have those links for you in the show notes. You're only one click away from getting in touch with Cristina, with Alex, following all their great content and all the different forms. Cristina and Alex, thank you so much for being with us today. Really appreciate it, and I've enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, great time.
And to you listeners, thank you as always for investing in yourself. If you've got the extra 30 seconds, if you leave a 5-star rating on Spotify, that would be fabulous. Helps me attract fabulous guests like Alex and Cristina. I love it. That's it for today's show. So always remember, don't just manage the business when you can lead the people.